Welcome to this discussion on the Kanye West Swindle. I usually don't get into stuff like this. To me, it's just diversionism, and nevertheless, it's created some confusion with a lot of people, even in the truth movement. So it does need to be addressed, because whenever you have someone like this coming out and drawing attention to this cabal, it's a great opportunity for people to start really blowing the whistle. Take advantage of this, ride the coattails of it. And so anybody who's doing that, great, awesome, yes, just like the Occupy movement, right? Remember how phony that was? Yet, there were a lot of sincere people who had legitimate gripes who did just that. They rode the coattails of it, and even though it didn't last long, they dried it up pretty quick. I think because they realized, oh wow, there are too many people that actually do know what's going on and are voicing their opinion. So they cut it off really fast. But nevertheless, for the time it lasted, it was a good opportunity for real truthers to get the message out. So such is the case here with Kanye. Regardless what his motives may or may not be, it is a good opportunity. It is getting a lot of people to question, to address this issue that almost never makes it in the public eye. But that, of course, in and of itself should cause us to be suspicious, though, right? The fact that it is making it in the public eye, why? It never happens, right? Opposition to this cabal, it never makes it into the media. The fact that it is now getting a lot of attention should automatically make you suspicious. But of course, there's other and even more serious reasons to be suspicious of all of this. So before we even look at the Kanye thing, I want to go over a few important points here. To first talk about distinguishing between true and false opposition movements, because all throughout history, there have been a great many false opposition movements, right? And a lot of sincere people who desire the truth have gotten taken in by stuff like this. We talked about Henry Ford, which for some people, that's even more of a blow. Was Henry Ford really all he claimed to be? He did write some great stuff. And, I would encourage people to read it, right? Read the Dearborn Independent. Everything he wrote is absolutely true. Problem is, he renounced everything he ever wrote. Everything he ever wrote. So it had a really massive chilling effect at the time, both within the truth movement and outside of it as well. So the whole thing, even though it seemed so great and it was really advancing forward people's awareness of the problem, when it was all said and done, it almost went completely belly up, right? Most of the genuine wise movement either gave it up altogether, discouraged because their great leader, their hero, had betrayed them, right? Or they just shut up. They were embarrassed, they were ashamed. And the general public, who never knew anything to begin with, felt that they had more reason than ever now to condemn these crazy conspiracy nuts who are picking on the poor they've been through so much. Came along not too long after that, and that was all the more reason now to never question these poor people. They've suffered so much. It's important to understand some basic principles on how to notice the difference, how to spot someone who is truly opposed to this enemy and one who's actually playing their game. If we see a truthful statement made by, say, a politician, yes, we can use that statement to our advantage, right? I've done it many times. I've quoted that statement from Winston Churchill, right? Where he talks about the international conspiracy for world domination, and he talked about how they were behind the revolution, blah, blah, blah. All true. And so it's a great quote to use. But just be sure you understand that that guy was one of the biggest puppets in history, right? Don't rally behind him. You can still use that quote and say, hey, Did you know what Winston Churchill said? Even Winston Churchill was aware of this problem. It's a great quote to use. But he was a scumbag. So first and foremost, in this little game of false opposition that they like to play, we need to be aware of the difference between how to use a good quote and how to not be taken in by the one whom we're quoting from. You can do that. You can do both. In fact, it's kind of like hijacking the Occupy movement, right? You're not supporting the Occupy movement, but you're taking advantage of it to get the word out to people what's really going on. To quote from Winston Churchill, you're not supporting him. You're not looking up to him as a hero. You don't believe for 1 minute that he was really concerned about this conspiracy for world government because he was all for it, right? So you're quoting him just so you can help create an awareness and get people to think, why would he say that? It's an open door to get other information into their heads, Just because Winston Churchill was a scumbag, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, in other words. You can use quotes like that and should use them. So that's the most important point, number one, to walk away with when we're considering things like Kanye West. It's a good way to spark a conversation.